So a little while back, I had the opportunity to stumble upon a TikTok meme, a couple of memes, a subgenre of memes, if you will. And that consisted of folks who worked somewhere in the corporate job world, and they were making fun of the way that corporate environments inspire people to say things in ways that hide or kind of obscure what's really going on. One post gave this example. We're going to need to do more with less and streamline our workflow so that you can maintain your capacity this quarter without reduction in output. That sound corporate enough? Translated into plain speech, someone is getting fired. You are going to have to do their work on top of your own, and everything will still need to be turned in on time. Anybody been there? Some of you might be there right now. Few things are further from plain speech than corporate lingo. Can I get an amen? It is largely meant to hide negative things, to smooth over possible conflict, to turn really negative things into a kind of toxic positive thing. It's to limit the words that might get you in trouble with HR. It's filled with a lot of euphemisms, phrases that make it easier to speak about difficult or taboo subjects without coming off too harshly or abrasively. And sometimes it really likes to hide what it really means. What corporate speech kind of shows us in some pretty funny ways is that our words can reveal even as they conceal. We can soften the blow of difficult truths, but we can also hide those truths in the same way. Perhaps illustrated most famously by that government phrase, I can neither confirm nor deny. Right? I can neither confirm nor deny. What are you even saying? Government speak like corporate speak can feel really alienating because we often feel like we are not getting the full picture. We're not getting everything that's there. We're not being spoken to with the goal of conveying something true and understandable. We are, to some degree, being manipulated, being hidden from what needs to be said. Now, don't get me wrong. There are really great occasions for euphemism. They're really helpful. I think we often say of our loved ones that they have passed away or they have gone to be with the Lord. Not because we don't understand that loss, not because we don't understand that they have died, but because the language of death can feel really, really painful to say. It's euphemism working to help us. And we've all had that experience, haven't we, with those who claim to, quote, say it like it is, but in doing so, get us no closer to what is true, right? We also know those who communicate in only passive-aggressive comments, and we wish that they would just come right out and say it, please. Just come on. So we are often caught in this parallel tension. What is being said? What is being said truthfully? What is being said plainly? Speaking plainly while speaking truthfully, it's just really hard. It's tough to do. We live in a society in which words are so often used to hide, to coerce, to manipulate, to oppress, to complexify what is morally clear and obvious. Words that are used to elicit our worst impulses within us. I think we can all feel, right, that we are in a season in our society, in our country, in which the value of plain speech, that is, plain and true, well, it's in need of healing. It's in need of recovery. The kind of speech that speaks a truth, that liberates rather than oppresses, that makes clear where we stand and who we stand with. I think Paul, when he's writing to the church in Corinth, I think he's talking in a season 2 of history in which the value of plain speech is at risk of being lost, not only for the politics of his day, but also by the intellectual elite. Paul is facing a cultural expectation to give off a sense of one's intellectual sophistication. You can feel him fighting against it in every word in the letter to the Corinthians. It would have been really common in the ancient world to have philosophers and rhetoricians create an expectation that wise words are meant to sway the emotion. They would allow your argument to gain more followers, maybe catch the eye of your superiors, inspire the envy of your enemies. Our words can do a lot, all at the same time. When speech is dressed to impress, persuade, make more complex than required, and maybe to hide something you don't want to admit, these are all matters of what Paul calls superior speech. Superior speech. When he brings the message of Christ and his cross to the people of Corinth, Paul does not want to be confused with someone who speaks the message with rhetorical flourish, with superior speech. He is not writing to convince by using the language of the elite, the language of the powerful, the politically savvy, the intellectually sophisticated. That is not his goal. Nor does it really represent his target audience. Of course, there were quite a few elites and wealthy, probably educated members in the Corinthian church, but they are not necessarily on Paul's good side, if you remember. They could create more problems than solutions sometimes for the church, and so Paul decides to head them off right here at the beginning by reminding everyone that he comes not with the language of the rulers, but with the language of the lowly. That's not to say Paul can't or doesn't ever utilize uppity language. As we all know, he can make some pretty sophisticated arguments when he is in the mood. But here, his intent is at its most concise. I decided to know nothing among you but Christ crucified, and here I am paraphrasing. I speak in a wisdom that is bound to sound simplistic, unrefined, ordinary to the rulers of this age. But you see, they have never spoken the language of oppression and liberation, these rulers, the language of solidarity and freedom, of cross and resurrection, of labor and capital. They've never spoken this language. I can't help but feel like Paul is speaking directly to our time. Sometimes he is so timely. When political rhetoric is employed more violently than ever, more disinterested in speaking truth, even when it is clear right in front of our eyes. In Paul's mind, the wisdom of this world, it's only ever interested in creating as much distance as possible between what we know to be true and our ability to say it plain as day. Not even the evidence of our eyes can save us from their attempt to alienate us from our moral clarity. No amount of body cameras will ever be enough when the truth is ultimately your enemy. Do you feel that? When the wisdom of the world is designed to hide and coerce, to oppress, even through artful means, it becomes more important to remember that our gospel comes in the words of the everyday. Our gospel comes in the words of the lowly, in plain speech that the powerful, they cannot see. For if they could see and hear, they would not continue to crucify the children of God. If they could hear and see, they would not continue to crucify the children of God. And yet here we are. In our day and age, few have spoken better about the damage done to our language by the powerful of this world than Toni Morrison. In her great and amazing Nobel laureate speech, she describes the types of language that often show up in seasons of censorship, state violence, authoritarianism. And in respect to her words, allow me to quote a little bit at length some of the things that she says there. In these seasons of censorship and state violence and authoritarianism, there is and will be rousing language to keep citizens armed and arming, slaughtered and slaughtering in the malls, courthouses, post offices, playgrounds, bedrooms, and boulevards. There will be stirring and memorializing language to mask the pity and waste of needless death. There will be more diplomatic language to countenance rape, torture, and assassination. There will be more of the language of surveillance disguised as research, of politics and history calculated to render the suffering of millions mute. There will be language glamorized to thrill the dissatisfied and bereft into assaulting their neighbors. Underneath the eloquence, the glamour, the scholarly associations, however stirring or seductive, the heart of this language is languishing. Or perhaps it's not beating at all. She is also speaking of our time. We only have to scroll our social media feed or turn on our television to find clear examples of what Morrison has described here. We find it in the mouths of government officials, religious leaders, corporate executives, the federal police. We are inundated with words that strive to keep us turned against the most vulnerable, to celebrate violence, to rewrite history. We should not be surprised by this. It has been the way of the rulers of this world since at least the time of Paul the Apostle. And so it is with our time. Now I want to name, as a pastoral care provider, that it feels to me, very alienating to live in the world that Morrison and Paul are discussing here. It can make you feel as if you're going crazy, as if you are alone, as if no one else sees the pain that you see, as if there are not enough companions to help you hold what is breaking in front of you, as if the plain and everyday words of your faith are not enough to protect others from violence and cruelty. And I want to take a minute to validate that feeling of grief mixed with fear and anger and powerlessness. But I do not, and hear me, I do not want it to turn within you into cynicism, because that is also a twisting of words that robs us of our power. We must ward off cynicism by all fronts. It is better to keep in touch with your anger, to keep in touch with your grief. They're telling you what you care about. They're telling you where you stand. And those feelings are our lifeline to those who need the power of our faith the most. Those feelings remind us to go and find where God is, where God has always been, with those who are being crucified, with the victims of violence that the rulers of this world do not want you to see. It may feel new to many of us, in fact, to live in a world we cannot fully trust. But for those who Paul calls the lowly, who is Jesus' main concern in the Gospels, the rulers of this world, well, they've always been obfuscating. They've always been speaking a language that cannot be trusted. That's not new to them, even if it feels new to us. That is why the oppressed are not merely, in this age or in any, the recipients of our mercy. They are our teachers, because they remind us of the power of plain speech that rings as clear as day, words that hold up in the light. That is why the language of the gospel must always be clearly voiced in words that resonate with the victims of this world. This is how we test its truth. The plain speech of Christ crucified confounds the powerful because the powerful do not seem to need it. It will always sound like foolishness and weakness to them, a flight of fancy. It is too plain to be taken seriously, and we've heard this morning what it sounds like. From the passage from the prophet of Isaiah that Hans read earlier. This is what it sounds like. The hungry are full. The grievers are comforted. The captives are released. The poor find abundance. The stranger is befriended. The dead come to life. The sick are healed. The cities are rebuilt. The lost are found. The naked are clothed. The broken are made whole again. Do you hear it? Does it resonate with you? Do those simple words have a home in your heart? Can you hear it? Can you feel the anchor they give when you don't know what to believe, when you don't know which way is up? You need some stability. You need to know where to go. Well, those are the words that guide our actions. Those are the words that say to us, this is what I believe. It is plain. It is clear. And it is for the people who need it most. If these words seem too simplistic to you, this language of poor and oppressed and naked and grieving and captives and strangers, death and resurrection, well, then my friends, I am a little worried that you are too far from the places where these words come to life. But I know that's not true of all of you. I know that's not true of this church. We are close to the people who need these words the most. I believe we are close to where God is. So as we live in this time, a time in which simple and clear truths are hard to come by, we must continue to speak the good news as clearly as we can. Because when we do, we'll soon find that those who need them most, well, they're right on our doorstep. It rings true to them. They are speaking the same language. Amen.